Right before we get the video started, I want to talk to you guys about an app, Real Cappers. It's a great app. Currently, it's one of the best apps you can go to get cappers predictions all aggregated in one spot. So essentially, you go there, you could check out all the cappers that are on the site. You could look them up. You could buy their picks individually, or you could see the percentage of cappers on either side of the fight. You can use that to make your prediction off the money line. So if there's a minus or a plus 100 where it's basically a 50-50 fight and you come on Real Cappers, you see that 75% of the cappers are predicting that predictor or that fighter to win, then maybe that would be a good bet for you to have. So great place you can go, and if you have great information yourself, you could put on your picks here. You could sell your picks and make some money that way, and it's a great community that's only going to grow. They're going to add other sports, things like that. So definitely go to the Google Play Store, go to the Apple Store, go to realcappers.com, check out Real Cappers app, and I don't think you'll be disappointed. So Real Cappers definitely on the come up, and definitely go check them out. Yo, what's up, guys? We're back for another breakdown predictions video. This week we got UFC 295. We got a pretty solid main card and decent prelims, and really looking forward to this card. I like the uncertainty of the two kind of main events, the two title fights. They're very hard to predict. I feel like they're hard to kind of be confident on either side. So always fun when you got fights like that where you don't really know what's going to happen. But coming off a really good week last week, we won over 10 units on the Patreon, which was awesome for me. We got to really end the year strong, and hopefully we can keep that going. So that was a great week. And if you guys want to come over, start joining the party, making some money, you know where to go, patreon.com/MMAPredictionGuru. And really appreciate everyone that's over there. I think give a good product. And this week we got quite a few odds out already. Like the Cage Warriors odds are out, Fury odds are out, KSW. So a few events besides UFC to break down that I'm going to be looking into and putting some bets on those other promotions on the Patreon, breakdowns, predictions. So definitely go check it out. You're helping supporting the channel, and you're probably going to make yourself some money as well. I've had 0 years where I have lost units, so every year I have been profitable. And besides that, man, hit the like button, put some comments down below. Let's try to get some interaction on this video, and let's try to pump it up and get some views. But first fight of the night here, we got an interesting one. We got the local guy with Denis Buzukja. He's taking on Jamall Emmers, who's coming in from California. And West Coast versus East Coast battle here with Buzukja. He's training at a Longo Weidman fight team, so obviously one of, if not the most recognizable and most successful gym over there on the East Coast. And he debuted in the UFC in his last fight. Didn't have the best showing. He ended up losing that fight to Sean Woodson, but took it on like 3 days' notice, showed toughness to make it all the way to a decision. And he's been kind of knocking on the door to the UFC for a while now. He was on the Contender Series twice and didn't make it to the UFC in either performance. He won one, lost one, but now he's here, and now this is a big chance for him to get his first UFC win. 26 years old, so 8 years younger than Jamall Emmers, which is a big deal usually in fights, and he's going to try to use that youthfulness to get the win. But Jamall Emmers is a very experienced fighter who is underrated. I feel like he's had some rough ones, like his fight with Giga Chikadze, his last fight with Jack Jenkins. Both those fights were controversial decisions where if Emmers would have won those fights, we might be looking at him with a ranking next to his name. But since he lost those close decisions, he's kind of back at square one where he's fighting a guy with 0 UFC wins and needs a victory here. I mean, if he loses 3 out of 4 fights, 34 years old at 145 pounds, kind of in no man's land. You don't know what the UFC is going to do with you at that point. So this is a must-win for Jamall Emmers. But you look at how both these guys fight. I like Buzukja's like youthfulness. I feel like he fights hard. He has great cardio, toughness, durability. He has big power, but doesn't really set his strikes up the best. I feel like when he lands, he can hit hard, but Emmers is going to be too fast, kind of moving around him, sticking and moving on him with straight shots, with kind of just faster to the point punches, kicks. And I think Jamall Emmers can wrestle him, get takedowns, control him against the cage. Should have a big advantage in that element of the game. And just the overall experience, man. I mean, Emmers has fought top 10 guys like Giga Chikadze. He's been fighting in the UFC for years. Buzukja had one UFC fight where he had 3 days notice for it, kind of got beat up in the fight, and you can kind of say it's his quasi-UFC debut. I feel like Emmers is a tough guy to beat for a prospect. I mean, very athletic, has the cardio on point, very composed guy. He's not going to make a lot of big mistakes. He has a long reach. He can wrestle. He could strike. And I just feel like Emmers is going to give Buzukja the loss. So I'm going to go Jamall Emmers by decision. But when you got Jamall Emmers as a huge favorite, like he's upwards of minus 250 at this point, it's always something you got to be a little bit worried about, because Emmers is one of these guys that could leave fights on the table with low volume at times. He can make mental mistakes, and you could tell that the judges have not always liked his style because they've given him a couple losses in close fights that people think he should have won. So I like more betting Emmers when he's the underdog, but this one I do think he's the rightful favorite, but you always kind of got to be a little bit hesitant when you see him at that number to bet him. And up next, we got an awesome fight. We got two action fighters, two prospects, young guys, 25 and under, with Joshua Van and Kevin Borjas. And really fun fight because these guys were actually supposed to fight on the Contender Series, and Van got the call to take on Zhalgas Zhumagulov on short notice. He got the win, which was a big victory at the time. I mean, for a guy with 8 fights to go up, beat a former M1 champion, a guy that had been fighting guys in the top 10. Very impressive win for Joshua Van. And Kevin Borjas, he went on the show, fought a short notice opponent in Victor Diaz, and he was able to beat up Victor Diaz, who was more of a grappling-based fighter, so this is going to be a different kind of matchup, but definitely looked really good, looked really slick, and coming out of that Pitbull Martial Arts Center, coming out of Peru, which has just been, that country has been on fire recently with MMA prospects getting in the UFC and performing well, so Borjas is going to be looking to be the next one. And for Josh Van, he's representing Myanmar, who's not really a country that's well known, but obviously he's trying to put them on the map, training out of Texas now with 4 Ounce Fight Club, which has produced high-level fighters in the UFC. So both these guys have good gyms behind them. They're both young and they're both hungry, and they're going to put on a show. It's going to be a fun fight. So you look at Joshua Van, I think he's the more athletic fighter, and I think he's more powerful, a little bit better defense and offense in terms of his hands. Borjas, he, in my opinion, more of a point fighter. He does have dangerous knees, but he likes kind of touch and move and very evasive guy, but he does pull back with his chin high, and I feel like if Josh Van could pressure, can kind of crush that distance and throw combinations, he could start to land on Borjas. I watched Borjas' one loss, and he was getting walked down and he was getting hit quite a bit and kind of tried to turn more into the grappling and ended up giving his back and submitted. And with Josh Van, I have seen Josh Van hit some nice slick back takes and get a rear naked choke in the past. And I feel like with both these guys, they're both really, really good. But I think that Van just has a little bit better defense, and I think he's going to be able to walk down Borjas, eat his shots a little bit better than Borjas can eat Van shots. I think Van is going to have the pretty significant power advantage. And I think that Borjas starts to get touched a little bit and tries to grapple. I think Van could sneak around, get to his back, and end up submitting him. So I'm going to go with Joshua Van via submission in this one. I think that's a decent prop bet to take, and I think Josh Van's going to get it done in the battle of these two prospects here. And for this next one, we got John Castenada taking on Kyung Kang. Kyung Kang, fighter who's been in the UFC forever. I mean, he started the UFC in the Fuel TV days 10 years ago. 2013 was his first UFC fight, and hasn't been that active, but he's 8-3-1 in the UFC, so great record. He's maintained the consistency throughout the years. He's on a 2-fight winning streak right now, so it's not like he's on the tail end of his career, been losing recently, even though he's 36 years old, but this is going to be the first time that Kang has fought twice in one calendar year since 2019. So hopefully his health is 100%. He can maybe go on a little bit of a run here. John Castenada, he's 3-2 so far in the UFC. Lost to Nathaniel Wood, who's in the top 15. Got knocked out by Daniel Santos in an insane fight. And then he beat Brett Johns. He beat Eddie Wineland. And he ended up getting an impressive win over Muin Gaffarov as well. So that was a a great victory there. And he trains out of the academy in Minnesota, which is headed up by Greg Nelson, who I think is one of the most underrated coaches in MMA. So that's something that I do like to see from Castenada. And if Castenada could put some performances together, I definitely think he could compete with ranked guys. I think both these fighters can. And Kyung, good boxer. He stands tall, and he's already the taller fighter in this matchup. And he feints a lot. He has good boxing. He has a crisp jab, fast 1-2s. He does have a decent counter left hook, too, and good distance control. When he can keep opponents on the outside behind the jab, behind his counter right hand, he can really pick fighters apart. Really nasty leg kicks, good front kicks to the body, and basically just uses the basics, jabs, 1-2s, 1-1-2s, leg kicks. He will spin when fighters pressure him hard and get a little bit wild, but nothing too crazy. He has a tight high guard. He has pretty good defense. And his chin is really good. I mean, he's only been finished one time in his whole career, and it came via soccer kicks. And it was a long time ago. His last fight, he was able to drop it, submit his opponent, but most of the time he hasn't really shown big power, has no knockouts in the UFC. But Kang, I think he's the better grappler in this matchup. If he can get to the back, I think he could have rear naked choke opportunities. And usually that's a secondary game plan, grappling, but is coming off a submission win in his last fight, and it could be a smart game plan here. He did lose his last loss did come to a grappler in Hani Yahya, but I don't think Castenada is going to really try to test the wrestling or anything. But Castenada is a shifty striker. He's really fast, switch stances all the time, good at manipulating distance with feints. He'll slip and rip. He does a good job entering in on different angles and loves being in the pocket. He's very comfortable there. He'll slide just out of the way of punches, come back with his own. He has a sneaky head kick. Defense is on point, great head movement. He has good speed in general. He'll parry kicks well. He did allow Nathaniel Wood to get off with a lot of leg kicks against him. And Wood was able to hit a couple takedowns too. But Castaneda made that a war. And in general, he pushes a pretty high pace. He usually has good cardio. In his fight with Daniel Santos, he got a couple of knockdowns and then did get a little bit tired just because Santos was a zombie and kept coming forward. But Castaneda definitely has some power. I mean, he's had at least one knockdown in his last 4 UFC fights. He has 1 UFC knockout. So definitely you have to be aware of Castaneda's power when you do fight him. And he has good wrestling offensively. I mean, he could time the doubles, the body locks. He could submit guys with front chokes. He has good arm triangles. So he's skilled everywhere. And I feel like it's a close fight, but I'm going to edge it to Kang. I think Kang can make it hard for Castaneda to get his game going with his jab, 1-1-2s, kind of just intercept the rhythm of Castaneda. I think Kang can do work with the leg kicks too. And I don't think he's going to sit in the pocket with Castaneda. I think he'll be defensively sound. He has the chin to take a shot or two if he needs to as well. And I think he has the slight cardio edge. I think, like I said, if he can get to the back, that could be a factor also. So Kyung Kang is going to be the prediction for me in this fight. And with this next fight, I really don't have a strong opinion on this fight. I feel like it's a difficult one to predict with Mark Madsen versus Bobby Green, or Mark Madsen versus Jared Gordon, But, yeah, I mean, Mark Madsen, he hasn't fought in over a year. This is going to be his first fight since November 4th of 2022 when he took that loss, his first career loss to Grant Dawson. 39 years old, taking a year off, even after a loss, if you're saying you're taking it off to improve your skills or whatever. I don't think that's necessarily that smart of a thing to do. But Jared Gordon, he's kind of the opposite. Like, he had that really weird situation where got knocked out by Bobby Green with the headbutt, so it became a DQ, or not a DQ, a no contest. Then he tried to come back really fast. I don't know if you guys remember this, to fight Clay Guida like a couple months later. And they had to pull him from the fight because he had concussion symptoms still, which, I thought that was kind of silly for him to try to take that fight. So you'd think that he's totally recovered by now, but he still got knocked out. And he's a guy that, in my opinion, is a little bit chinny. I mean, you look at his career, he's been knocked out a few times. So I see a lot of people with a lot of confidence on Gordon, and I don't really share that confidence. I mean, I get Madsen 39, but Jared Gordon's 35 coming off a knockout. Even if it wasn't a loss, he still took that damage. But when you're looking at how these guys fight, I mean, obviously we know Mark Madsen, he has the Olympic background, so he could wrestle you really well. He's very big, physical. He usually comes in with decent explosiveness, athleticism, cardio, everything like that, but very low pace that he pushes and really just works the jab on the feet, is not a very high level striker. We saw leg kicks were a big issue for him in multiple fights. We've seen him get dropped before. But difficult guy to put away. He did end up getting submitted late against Grant Dawson, but hung in there for a while. And I do think he has the power edge. Like, he dropped Grant Dawson. He's been able to drop a couple other guys that he's fought, and I think he has the power advantage. But Gordon is going to have the big volume edge and kind of just the superiority in the striking in terms of fluidity and just throwing a wider array of attacks. I think he can use the leg kicks. They can kind of use the off-angle punches that he throws and be successful. And then as far as the wrestling goes, I don't know. I mean, we've seen Madsen get out-wrestled. It seems like his MMA grappling maybe isn't as high level as his Olympic pedigree. And Jared Gordon, I don't necessarily know if he's going to be able to go out there and wrestle Madsen, but I think it maybe would be smart to try to mix in a takedown or two. And I don't know if he does take down Gordon, I don't think he's going to be able to hold him down necessarily. So I see this as being more of a stand-up fight, and I'm going to edge it towards Jared Gordon. But yeah, this is one of these fights that I'm not too confident in my prediction, just because I think both these guys are a little bit iffy. But I'm going to go with Jared Gordon, the favorite. And this next fight, stylistically, this is another great matchup with Vyacheslav Borchev Slava Claus taking on Nazim Sadykhov. And it's going to be a striking fight, I would imagine. Nazim Sadykhov, come forward brawler. He is the New York guy, so he's going to have that on his side. But I see people thinking he's going to wrestle here. I don't really see that. I mean, he did get a submission in his last fight, but kind of off a weird situation where he was grabbing the cage to reverse position. And his top game is nasty, but I don't think he's really going to go in that direction. I mean, Sadykhov, come forward brawler type of guy. Wants to get in the pocket, throw down. He can be a bit stiff and rigid at distance, a little inactive. He also has some big reactions to feints, fakes. He'll make some pretty big movements to evade punches. Hittable, but very durable guy. And when he can get in the pocket, he throws heat. Nice counter crosses, uppercuts, good check hook. He'll attack the body. He has good pressure, and he can maintain power for 15 minutes as well. Also super durable. He's been dropped before and came back. And he's never faced someone, though, like Borschev, is technically sound, someone that's more of a body snatcher as well. So it's going to be a new challenge for him. But as far as wrestling grappling goes, Sadykhov is the better wrestler, but he isn't active, and he likes to strike. If he does get on top, I think he could have a big edge. He's training with those killers on the mats and Sarah Longo, so that would be the smart thing for him to do, but I just don't think he has the wrestling in his pedigree to do that. Slava Borschev, badass striker. He likes to do his work in the pocket as well, so that's why I think it's going to be a fire fight. And he doesn't throw a ton at distance. In this fight, though, I think the leg kicks, the feints, and just the jab, the more minimal strikes that he does throw at distance is going to be more than what Nazim does. So I think he'll have the edge there. And in the pocket, when he can start to make reads, he loves to rip the body, slip and rip the left hook to the body, left hook to the head. Super accurate in exchanges. He has a nasty right hook, right uppercut, right overhand. And he has the ability to change that fight with one shot. He has the eraser where he could be losing the fight, just needs one moment, come back, erase everything that happened, and get the win. And his striking overall is very high level. He has gotten clipped, though. He got clipped and dropped against Kenley St. Louis. And his style is dangerous. So it's going to be interesting to see how these guys match up. I think someone's going to get knocked out. But as far as the wrestling goes for Slava, I mean, kind of been exposed in the UFC. You could just take him down and smother him. But he does have decent get-ups, and he's not the worst grappler in the world, but definitely if you could take him down and just kind of smother him, you can hold him down. But I see this fight being more of a brawl, and I think that Borschev could take it. He's the more polished and experienced striker. He has more speed, better footwork, larger arsenal of attacks. Also, he's the better defense, in my opinion. We saw Evan Elder do really well on the feet, get the better of the striking against Sadykhov for the better part of 2 rounds before getting stopped in the third off of a cut stoppage. So I'm going to predict that Borschev ends up winning this fight via second or third round KO TKO here. And this next one is going to be a quick prediction here with Mateusz Rebecki versus Roosevelt Roberts. I just really don't see how anyone could predict Roberts to win this fight. He's coming off that loss to Austin Hubbard, which made his Ultimate Fighter, attempt to be the champion unsuccessful, but had a couple wins and kind of remade a name for himself in terms of UFC fans. I feel like he kind of had a good account for himself on the show, so they've given him another chance here. And if you remember, he left the UFC in a really bad run where he was getting finished in every fight, and I just don't see how he wins this one. I mean, he could win it in certain ways, like he's dangerous with his length. He could land a shot as Rebecki comes in and knock him out. He has a big reach advantage. The guillotine, we've seen him hit that before on guys, but his wrestling is not even close to Rebecki's level. I think Rebecki is way faster, more explosive, and I feel like Roberts' chin is a little bit questionable. I think he's, coming in here with not a lot of notice. I think he's going to be very gun-shy. I think he's going to be very aware of the takedown, and I think Rebecki can go out here and either get him out of there with strikes or just take him down, rinse and repeat, and end up winning a decision. So Mateusz Rebecki is the prediction here. He's one of my most confident picks on the card, and he's a huge favorite for a reason here. And we got the first women's fight on the card here with Tabatha Ricci taking on Loopy Godinez in a battle of ranked fighters here. Tabatha Ricci, 4 wins in a row since losing her UFC debut, and her UFC debut was kind of a suicide mission. I mean, she took on Manon Fiorot up a weight class. Since coming back down to 115, she's ranked 10th in the world now, and she's been built up well. I mean, she's slowly been increasing her level of competition. Her last fight, she took out Jillian Robertson, who I would say is her most difficult opponent to date, and now she's taking on Lupita Godinez. And Lupita Godinez, 6-3 in 9 UFC fights. She's had 10 fights now if she walks in the cage since joining the company in 2021, which is pretty phenomenal. 3-fight winning streak. She's currently earned her second UFC, she earned her second UFC finish in her last fight, and her only loss recently in her last 6 fights has came to Angela Hill, and if she wins this one, I think she'll break into the top 10. So it's a good fight because both girls have advantages in different areas. When you look at Tabatha Ricci, her elite attribute is her speed. She's extremely fast. She's very mobile, evasive. Lupita Godinez, I would say she's pretty slow, plodding footwork. She has big power and solid cardio, whereas Ricci doesn't have the most power, though, so that's where she has the advantage. And Ricci has a cardio taxing style, so you do see her slow down in the third round with all that movement. Early, Ricci is probably going to be able to hit and not get hit, be much faster, maybe secure a takedown or two. And I don't see Ricci being able to hold down Godinez, though, and I think if she starts to slow down and let Godinez get inside, land her hooks, Godinez doesn't have to land many strikes to even out the volume disparity because of the power advantage. We also haven't seen a fighter look to put Ricci on her back, which we know Godinez has the capability of doing. It's just Godinez hasn't wrestled when she's fought higher level grapplers, so I'm not sure if she'll be confident enough to try that in this matchup. Ricci, I think, is going to have her cardio on point, knowing who she's fighting here. Maybe have some improved boxing and just touch and go. And for Godinez, she needs to cut the cage off, move her feet faster, try to get on the inside, let her shots go. And I think it'll be kind of one of those type of fights where it's the eye of the beholder type of fight, damage versus volume, where who you're going to give the fight to. I think if Ricci can get out of the first round clean, she probably can win the second and take a decision. Godinez only needs a few shots, like I said, to offset the work of Ricci, but I'm going to say the speed of Ricci is going to ultimately be the tail of the fight. I think she's going to be too fast. I think she's going to land, make Godinez miss, hit a takedown or two, and win a decision. So, going to go with Baby Shark here, Tabatha Ricci via decision. And another really good fight here with Steve Erceg taking on Alessandro Costa. Short notice fight where Steve Erceg, he was originally going to fight Matt Schnell, which would have been a fight to get him into the top 10. Now he's taking on, in my opinion, a tougher opponent with a outer ranking and a lesser name, so it's a tricky fight for Erceg to accept, but he is looking to build off what was a phenomenal UFC debut at UFC 289 in June. He fought a top 10 ranked fighter on short notice in David Dvorak, and he was able to win a decision. And obviously, Costa is still a very good opponent, but not on the level of a guy like Dvorak, so Usyk just can't have that letdown spot here, but I think he's a really good fighter. And Alessandro Costa, he leveled his UFC record at 1-1 his last fight with the second round TKO victory over Jimmy Flick. And he debuted on short notice against the fighter in the top 5, Amir Albazi, got knocked out in that fight, so wasn't a great showing for him. He was competitive, but it was just a little bit too much too soon. And now he's accepting another short notice fight here against a hammer and Steve Usyk. So hopefully he's ready to go. And a win here is going to get either guy a top 15 fighter next, in my opinion. But you look at Steve Usyk, cool, calm, and collected fighter. He's well-rounded. He's skilled everywhere. On the feet, he brings effective pressure. He has solid defense. Usyk's guard is tight. He has good footwork. He cuts the cage off well. His head movement is pretty good, but he can get hit a little bit. It seems like he's a little bit of a slow starter. He doesn't go first that often. You usually throw 3-2s or a single jab when he does go first, but he's a better counter puncher. He likes to slip punches, then return with lead hooks to the body, big right hands. He has power in his punches and kicks, and very fast guy as well. Good kicks, nice front kicks, round kicks, head kicks. He can get hit with leg kicks a little bit, but I think he's going to shore that up, and he could definitely take a shot. I mean, I've seen him get hit with clean punches before, but he's able to eat them, and he can make fighters gun-shy with his ability to kind of read distance and counter, and great cardio. He usually gets better as fights go on. Very technically sound striker, and a solid grappler as well. Strong clinch game, nice elbows, nice knees. He's good at finding the back. He can snatch the neck in a front headlock and then snap fighters down that way too. Good front choke game. His takedown defense looked really good against Dvorak, and he was able to stay on his feet for the majority of that fight. The couple of times Dvorak did get a takedown, Usyk was able to bounce up really quick. And I think wrestlers are what are going to be his main issue, or what he needs to be aware of and improve going forward. But with this fight, I don't think that's going to be much of a problem for him against Costa. When you look at Alessandro Costa, he's a short, compact fighter, very strong, explosive, counter puncher. For flyweight, he has knockout power, and he also likes to keep his guard high, wait for fighters to commit, then throw counter hooks, counter overhands. He has a really nasty left hook, power right overhand, tight power hook, so he definitely is dangerous. His uppercut is nasty too. Calf kicks, I think, is going to be something that he's going to rely on in this fight. And most of the time, though, he's exploding with the one-strike attacks. He's a big combination striker. And when he can get fighters back toward the fence, he will let his hands go. But in this one, I don't think he's going to have a lot of opportunities to really let go of combinations. He's going to have to rely on landing that one-hitter quitter. Doesn't use many feints or throw jabs or shots on the outside, really. If they stay on the outside and neither fighter commits much, I think Usyk will just win off minimal activity. And Usyk could definitely land a rear cross down the center, a 1-2 stun Costa. Albazi was able to drop Costa in round 2 with a straight right, and then knocked him out in the third round with an uppercut. I definitely think Costa's chin is a little questionable because he's been knocked out in 2 of his 3 losses. And Alessandro Costa is a hard guy to take down. Explosive, solid sprawl. He isn't a very active wrestler, but when he drops guys, he can get on top. He has nasty ground and pounds. And doesn't seem to be the greatest off of his back, though. He does have a few armbar victories, but I've also seen other opponents hold him down, like Amir Albazi. One thing about him, though, is he does train, and he was in the corner of Diego Lopez for Lopez's last fight. So anytime you're grappling with that guy, you're going to get, improved grappling skills. So I think that's good to see for Costa. Costa, I think he has good cardio, but Usyk's is a lot better. And personally, with this match, I think Steve Usyk should be able to get this done. He's better everywhere. Just has to be defensively sound. He has to be ready to defend the low kicks. And Usyk should be able to download the data, get a beat on Costa in order to counter. And if Costa gets gun-shy and doesn't throw much, Usyk would just chip away and win the fight. He has the style to be smart, not get hit with stupid shots. I think if Costa stays aggressive, Usyk can hurt him or find the back and get the finish. So my prediction is going to be Usyk wins via third-round rear naked choke. And up next, we have a really fun matchup again with 2 elite grapplers. Diego Lopez, he's came into the UFC and made an instant impact. I mean, his fight against Movsar Evloev pushed him, arguably won the first round, threw up a ton of submissions, rocked him, and had a lot of moments throughout that whole fight, ended up losing the decision. Comes back, fights Gavin Tucker with time to prepare, not a short notice fight against an elite level opponent, and makes quick work of him, submits him in the first round. So Diego Lopez is a guy that has a lot of people's eyes open, and they're looking at him as a future contender in this division. So needs to perform here and kind of show people that he is who they think he is. A lot of experience. I mean, 28 fights already, so I think he should be ready to come in and compete with top guys if he continues to improve his level with the level of competition that he faces. This time, though, he's going to have Pat Sabatini across from him, a guy that, my opinion, is a little bit underrated. He's had a really good run in the UFC. He's only had one loss that came to Damon Jackson really early in the fight, where kind of just got caught cold and then ended up getting finished on the ground. And his last fight, he came back and he took a little bit of layoff after the loss to Jackson, but didn't miss a beat at all. I mean, he barely got hit in his fight with Lucas Almeida, took him down in the first round, mauled him, then ended up finishing him in the second round with a submission. So Sabatini showed that he still is hungry to break into those rankings and fight against these higher quality fighters. So it's going to be two hungry fighters in that octagon on Saturday night. And when you look at it from a striking perspective, I think Lopez has pretty significant advantage there. Pat Sabatini, short, compact guy. He is powerful, especially with his kicks, and he could switch stance, throw that hard body kick from southpaw, and he definitely has power in his overhands and his kicks, but not a lot of volume on the feet. He has very awkward defense, doesn't seem like he's confident striking, and when you look at Diego Lopez, guy's a killer in the stand-up. I mean, he's not necessarily the most technical. He can be flat-footed. He wings a lot of shots. He relies heavily on his power. But great chin, comes forward, throws a stiff jab, throws a heavy right hand, throws big kicks. And I think he can batter Pat Sabatini, hurt him, knock him out, drop him and submit him if this fight stays standing and Sabatini can't get the takedown. And Diego Lopez has good enough takedown defense, but he also likes being on his back, and he's a lead off his back, throwing up submissions, getting finishes in that way. And Sabatini, on the other hand, is a guy that wants to be in top position, crushing you, heavy top pressure, nullifying all your submissions with his wrestling and grappling acumen. So it's going to be a battle of that. I mean, we have seen James Gonzalez take Pat Sabatini's arm home with him and submit him, but we've also seen Pat Sabatini have quite a few fights where he gets on top, uses that wrestling and grappling blend to just totally nullify grappler's game and just beats him up from the top position. So Diego Lopez just can't get too comfortable off his back if the submissions aren't working and lose via getting held down, like we've seen happen to him against Joe Anderson Brito on the Contender Series, like we saw happen to him in his UFC debut against Movsar Evloev. Because I don't necessarily think Pat Sabatini is going to do a lot of damage on the ground against Diego Lopez. He does have nasty ground and pound. He has a good submission game, but Diego Lopez is so active that he really usually is the more active guy off his back than the person is that's on top of him. But if he gets held down, then it makes the judges have to have an iffy decision there where it could go either way. And I think if Lopez takes the decision away from the judges with the finish, then that's going to be his optimal path to victory here. I think that if it goes to decision, Sabatini's going to have a big chance to win. But ultimately, I just feel like Diego Lopez is too dangerous. I think on the feet, he could club and sub Pat Sabatini. I think he can knock him out. I think he can catch Sabatini from his full guard with submission. So I just think ultimately Diego Lopez is going to find that finish like he usually does when he gets the win and end up winning in that way. So I'll say Lopez wins via first or second round submission. Man, the second fight on the main card, we got a fight that I've been looking forward to since it got announced. I think a lot of UFC fans have been looking forward to this one. Amazing matchup with Benoit Saint Denis, the God of War, taking on Matt, the Steamroller Frevola. Two guys that are first team all violence in the UFC recently that have just been putting on exceptional shows, getting finishes, taking guys out. So going to be an awesome fight here and great clash of styles. I mean, you look at Benoit Saint Denis, this guy's a forward pressure beast southpaw who wants to come forward, use his kicking game, his durability, and his ability to kind of force a brawl to open up opportunities to get the takedown. And then when he gets on top, he has an exceptional top game. His cardio is phenomenal and just breaks these guys with his ability to take damage, keep coming forward, give damage, mix it up, use his body attack with the kicks and then get takedowns. And eventually these guys can't keep up with the pace and he takes them out. And just a very intense, exceptional fighter. And the disadvantage is about his style, though. I mean, he comes forward, he can get square, very hittable. I mean, we saw in the Zaleski dos Santos fight, if that was any other ref, he probably would have got stopped in that one. And we've seen him get rocked in his fight with Gabriel Miranda. He even took a lot of shots in the Thiago Moises fight. But I feel like with this matchup, he can't take those punches. Even in his fight with Zaleski, I see people bringing that fight up to kind of indicate that there's no way that he can get knocked out against Frevola. But even though Zaleski is a 170-pounder, I think Frevola has more power in his hands. I mean, I've never seen in any of Zaleski's UFC fights him get a knockout with punches, whereas I've seen Matt Frevola touch guys with punches and they freaking fly off the freaking ground and end up on their back unconscious. So, I mean, this guy I think has dynamite in his hands, and it's going to be a different type of power that Benoit Saint Denis is going to be dealing with. And I definitely think Saint Denis needs to get it to the ground. I mean, in these other fights, I think he's had more favorable matchups because they've been fighters that don't have a ton of movement. With Matt Frevola, I don't see Frevola staying in that kicking range for Benoit Saint Denis. He's going to make Benoit Saint Denis come to him by using lateral footwork. And then he's going to be trying to light him up with that big left hook with the big right hand. And Saint Denis is going to have to figure out how to get inside without getting hit and then how to get the takedowns on a guy that has really good takedown defense. So I think it's a difficult matchup. And when you look at Matt Frevola, he's just been lighting people up, knocking him out recently. He broke Drew Dober's chin, which people thought was unbreakable. Finished him with strikes, even though I thought it was a little bit of an early stoppage. He dropped him clean and unloaded on him. And he's had, 3 knockouts in a row, or at least 2 knockouts in a row before that. And you look at Matt Frevola's style, like I just kind of talked about. He likes to move, use a lot of lateral movement, pull guys into his big punches. And if you want to stick in the pocket with him and brawl, he'll brawl with you. He does have a questionable chin in his own right where he's been knocked out himself a couple times, but it hasn't happened recently. I think he's improved his defense a little bit. And usually when you knock him out, you got to catch him with a big shot that he doesn't see coming because he has taken big damage in other fights. I don't think he necessarily has a bad chin. And then you watch his fight with Arman Tsarukyan. In the first round, he had really good wrestling defense. He was able to defend a lot of the takedowns. He was able to get takedowns himself, get back up to his feet through those takedown scrambles. And he wasn't even expecting to fight a wrestler that night. I mean, he was going to fight a Zaitar. Zaitar pulled out, and then he fought Arman on like a few days' notice and still showed some decent ability. And you've seen other fights where he's wrestled to victories. So I think he's going to be ready with the takedown defense, with the grappling defense to get back up to his feet if he gets taken down, to defend the majority of the takedowns and make this a stand-up fight. And I think he's going to be the more polished and composed striker. I also like the fact that he's fighting at home. I think Benoit Saint Denis is coming back really quickly, too. I mean, this is going to be his second fight in just 2 months' time. Third fight in, 5 months? And he's been taking damage in these other fights as well. And he's been fighting at home, too. I mean, I think that's a big deal. I think coming over, having a fight in New York is going to be a new experience for him. And I'm going to Frevola via first-round knockout. So give me Matt Frevola to come in, stop the hype train of Benoit Saint Denis, and get another win on his ledger. And in the feature bout, we got our second women's fight on the card with Makenzie Dern taking on Jessica Andrade. 2 top 10 fighters that are looking to kind of break into that title picture with the win here, I guess, with Makenzie Dern for sure. With Jessica Andrade, she just wants a win, man. I mean, she's had a bad run recently, lost 3 fights in a row. And even though she's 32, I think in fight years she's a lot older. I mean, she's been in the UFC since the beginning, 2013, when there was only 135-pound weight class. You saw Jessica Andrade, and they're banging it out with those big girls. And now she's kind of settled into her weight class at 115, became the champion. But that was years ago at this point, and she's on this losing streak now. So needs to get a victory and needs to turn it around and show that she's still UFC caliber. I don't see her getting cut or anything with the loss, but it's just she wants to have any hopes of getting back into that title picture. This is almost a must win. And with Makenzie Dern, she looked phenomenal, better than we ever seen her in her last fight with Angela Hill. And, she had those going through a divorce during that one, and we kind of coined that mythical fighter, Makenzie Dern, having personal issues. And now she's talking about it again, where I guess she's going to have to pay alimony or whatever for from this fight to her ex-husband. So she's got more issues going on in the background. I mean, is that going to make her come out and fight like a crazy girl again and beat the shit out of Andrade? I mean, you never know. But she looked exceptional in her last fight. And with this one, I think it's kind of a hard fight to predict, because if it was a few years ago, just a couple years ago even, I think that Andrade would actually be like a pretty decent favorite. But now where the position these two girls are in their career, you have Makenzie Dern as a sizable favorite here over Jessica Andrade to beat her. And I do feel like, though, Makenzie Dern is going to have the size advantage. She's going to be more athletic, and I think her pressure and her striking is improving. It's opening up the takedowns for her a little bit more. It's just hard for me to pick Jessica Andrade at this point. Andrade could land a bomb and knock Dern out. Dern obviously doesn't have that high-level striking, but I think she can end up getting it to the ground and getting the submission, or at least getting a decision win. It's a tough fight to predict, though. I mean, I would definitely not go and bet Dern heavy, because if Andrade can keep it on the feet, she's one of the few girls that I think could land and match the power of Dern or even exceed it. And we don't know how Dern's necessarily going to do against a big power puncher like that. But it's with Andrade coming off these losses in a row, getting finished, and Makenzie Dern looking so good, I got to pick Dern, and I think she'll get it done inside the distance via submission. I think if she gets to the ground, she'll have a huge advantage there. So Dern is going to be the prediction for me in this fight via submission. And in the co-main event, we got the heavyweight title on the line, or the interim heavyweight title on the line, with Tom Aspinall taking on Sergei Spivak. Totally new matchup. We were originally obviously getting that main event with John Jones against Stipe Miocic. Now we're getting two of the new gen heavyweights fighting basically for a number one contender slot here, because Dana White already said that Stipe is going to be the next title challenger, so these guys are kind of just going to be waiting in the wings, I guess. And Sergei Pavlovich was already going to be the backup fighter, so I guess you could say he has a small advantage in that sense. I don't know how hard he's been training as the backup fighter. I mean, especially at heavyweight, it's like, barring an injury, you're not going to have a guy miss weight or get in that way, so it's a lot less likely that you're going to fight. But hopefully Spivak has been putting in time, like he's been on a real training camp, whereas Tom Aspinall got the call in 2.5 weeks notice. I think he was going to be going on vacation, and you don't know how much he's been training or what he's been doing in terms of being ready. So I think you have to give Pavlovich the slight edge in terms of preparation. But these guys, I think, have been kind of circling each other. They knew they were going to fight each other, and you have to think they've been thinking in their heads, like, okay, what am I going to do if I fight this guy? And, so Aspinall, maybe even if he isn't in the greatest shape, hopefully he already has a good idea of what he wants to do and how he could beat Pavlovich, because he's already thought about it. But, man, I mean, this is a hard fight to predict. This fight and the main event, I feel like they're very volatile fights, unpredictable fights, where it's like both these guys, Tom Aspinall and Sergei Pavlovich, have ran over all their opponents that they beat and really faced no adversity in the UFC or in recent years. If you go way back, and you watch Sergei Pavlovich's fights in Russia when he was younger, he did go to 5-round decisions and things like that, throwing no volume, and he was very strange. Now he's a lot more aggressive, but he did go 5 rounds with not decent pace, but he didn't get tired. He just fought at a low pace. So I don't know but with this style that he's bringing now, it's like, how long is he able to sustain that pressure without getting tired? You don't really know. I mean, he's beaten everyone in the first round. He's just been taking them out. And Tom Aspinall, the same thing could be said for him. I mean, not had any adversity in his fights. We've never seen him get hit with a big shot from a guy like Sergei Pavlovich. So it's like, Is he going to be able to take that power? You don't really know, but I do think that obviously Aspinall is the more well-rounded guy. He could bring it to the ground, and if he gets on top, that's the one place where you've seen Pavlovich has had issues. In the UFC, we saw Overeem finish him pretty easily with ground and pound in the first round. And if Aspinall gets on top, we've seen him take quick work with his jiu-jitsu on these UFC heavyweights and finish them with ease. So for me, that's what Aspinall is going to be wanting to do. He's going to be wanting to use that speed, stick move, maybe throw a couple punches, but really try to set up that takedown. If he can get on top, I think he could really have a lot of success. For Pavlovich, he's going to be wanting to come forward with that southpaw boxing style, looking for the jab, looking for that big left uppercut, looking for the straight left hand, and just trying to land anywhere on Aspinall because he has that concussive type power that he only needs to land a couple of times to take you out of there. But we did see Curtis Blades have some success in that fight before he got knocked out with the striking. He landed some shots. Pavlovich walked through him like they were nothing, but with Aspinall, I think maybe he's going to be the faster guy with his feet and with his hands. He can maybe stick and move on him. And I do think Aspinall, if he gets to the ground, is going to have a big edge. So I'm just going to go with the more well-rounded guy. And Aspinall, I'm going to say, eventually gets it to the ground in the first or second and gets Sergei Pavlovich out of there via submission or ground and pound TKO. But, man, this is a fight that's totally unpredictable to me. Pavlovich could come in here, bomb out of there in the first round. Or Aspinall could prove he has a great chin. We just don't know. We don't know much of anything. Pavlovich, he theoretically has been getting ready to fight a guy like John Jones or Stipe. Maybe his wrestling will be on a level where Aspinall's not going to be able to take him down, and he just walks him down and boxes him up and knocks him out. This fight could go in both directions, but personally, I'm going to say Aspinall gets him down and gets the submission or ground and pound victory. And finally, we got the main event. We got Alex Poatan Pereira taking on Jiri Prochazka in a fight for the vacant light heavyweight title. And man, light heavyweight has just been a mess recently. Obviously, Glover took the belt, then he lost that belt to Jiri. Jiri got injured. He was out for a long time. It's been, I guess not a crazy amount of time, but a year and a half or so since he last fought. And then Jamall Hill won the belt, vacant title against Glover. He gets hurt. Now he has to vacate the belt, and now it's Jiri Prochazka taking on Alex Pereira for the vacant title once again. And that was after Jamall fought Ankalaev to a draw in a vacant title fight, so no one won the belt in that one. So it's like, man, it took a lot for these guys to end up being in a vacant UFC interim title fight with the chance to be undisputed champ again. But we're here, and we got Alex Pereira against Jiri Prochazka for the undisputed title. Prochazka obviously coming off that layoff, whereas Alex Pereira has been very active. He's fought two title fights and 3 UFC champions since the last time that Jiri Prochazka fought, and we saw him beat Jamall in his UFC debut at light heavyweight. Obviously, we saw the 1-win, 1-loss against Israel Adesanya, and man, you got to give Alex Poatan a lot of credit. The guy got knocked out in April, came back 3 months later, got a win over a former UFC champ at a higher weight class, and now is fighting in a title fight just, a few months after that. So he's going to be in 2 title fights, basically, in a year span, and 4 total fights, or 3 title fights in a year span, which is a lot of title fights, and not many champions even do that. And, this fight, it's another one, just like the main event, or the co-main event, where it's extremely hard to predict. It's like, with Jiri, we got a guy that we don't necessarily know exactly how he's going to come back from that injury. Apparently, it was a really bad injury. I've seen back, in the past, him doing some footage, like working out. He looked really bad, but obviously that was a while back, and I think he's going to be looking 100% in this one. But his style is just so hard to break down and talk about. The guy's just constantly switching stance, and he's throwing from off angles, throwing a wide array of attacks, and it looks like he's very open to be hit, but he can roll with strikes. He's waiting for you to throw, kind of baiting you so he can counter. He has plethora of kicks that he throws, knees, spinning attacks, and you just don't really know what he's going to do. So it's hard to kind of get ready for a guy like that. I think it's good that Glover Teixeira fought Jiri, so I think that gives Alex a slight advantage. But even with Alex's kickboxing experience and everything that he has, I don't think he's ever fought someone quite like Jiri. So that's going to be weird for him on the feet. I think it's going to be different. With Poatan, he's the much more polished striker. Like, his defense is a lot more on point, even though he's hittable as well and kind of all offense himself. I think he's going to be a little bit smarter in his attack. He's going to be trying to catch Prochazka coming in. And I don't see either guy really looking to wrestle here. So it's just going to be a straight up striking fight. And Prochazka just leaves too many openings to me, man. I mean, the guy could knock out Pereira. We've seen him get knocked out in the UFC and get knocked out as a kickboxer. We've seen Prochazka get knocked out twice too, though. So both these guys, if they land, the first person to land, I think he's going to get the knockout. But I don't see Prochazka wrestling him or trying to grapple. I see some people kind of bringing up that narrative. I don't really think that's going to happen. And I just feel like on the feet, Poatan is going to make Prochazka pay for some of his mistakes and end up being the first guy to knock him out in UFC competition. I just like the fact that he's been more active. I don't necessarily know how Jiri's going to come back. I don't like how open Jiri is being hit against a guy with one-shot power. I feel like Pereira is a little bit more athletic and just slightly better than the guys that he did fight previously, Prochazka, in terms of matchup-wise, too. Like, Glover, I think, would be a very difficult matchup for Poatan, but for Prochazka, I think he probably should have done a better job than he did in that fight. I don't think he necessarily looked that good. But, man, I feel like it's a hard fight to predict. I always kind of don't have great reads on a lot of fights with Prochazka, so I could be off again on this one, but I just feel like Poatan's going to knock him out. I think he's going to be the more technical striker, so going to go with Alex Poatan in the main event. So there you have it, guys. It's my full card breakdown and predictions video for this card. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully you learned something from this fight prediction video. Hit the like button, put a comment down below, and as far as my most confident pick and my parlay of the week goes, for the most confident pick on this card, I guess I will say that it will be Mateusz Rebecki. As far as my parlay of the week, I'm just going to do a play of the week, and it's going to be on Matt Frevola. So go in, put a bet on Matt Frevola plus 190. I think you're going to be happy at the result at the end of that fight. Make yourself some money. So besides that, guys, go to patreon.com/prediction for all the best bets on the internet. Let's try to make some money, get paid this weekend, help support the channel. Really appreciate all you guys, and I'll be back soon talking about another fight card, so talk to you guys later.